Out of the box, Vue supports native browser events such as clicks, key inputs, hovers, etc. We can listen for these events to run a function whenever an event occurs. It's very easy to do. We can listen for events by using directives. Inside the app.js file, let's create a new data property called age. Its value will be 20. Then, let's display this age inside the template. I'm going to place it beneath the links we created previously. Let's say we wanted to add a button that will increment or decrement the age based on which button a user clicks. Below the input fields, we're going to add 2 buttons for incrementing or decrementing the age. Neither buttons do a thing at the moment. I want to be able to listen for a click. If a click is registered, we'll want to update the age property in the instance. The directive we'll want to use is called vOn. This directive will listen for an event. The name of the event it'll listen to needs to be added after the directive. Like the vbind directive, we must add a colon followed by the name of the event. In our case, this would be the click event. All JavaScript events are supported by this directive. The value of this directive can be one of 2 things. You can either execute code or pass in the name of the method you like to run whenever the event occurs. Let's try both. For the increment button, we're going to set this to increment. For the decrement button, we're going to use the decrement operator on the age data property. Something you'll notice is that I'm not adding the parentheses after the function name. This is entirely optional. If you don't plan on passing anything to your function, the parentheses can be omitted. Vue can invoke the function without a problem. The increment function doesn't exist. We'll have to define it. Inside the methods object, we're going to define the increment function. Inside the function, we're going to increment the age data property. I'm accessing the data via the this keyword. Inside the template, I'm accessing the data without referencing an object. That's because Vue will automatically assume any data you access in the template comes from the data object. Therefore, we don't need to do anything special to access the data in the template. Alright, let's give this a test, shall we? Refresh the page. We will see the age along with the 2 buttons. If I were to click either of these buttons, the age will increase or decrease depending on which button I click. By using the vOn directive, we can listen for events on our elements. Listening for events is a common practice in Vue. There's a shorthand available for listening for events. Back inside the template, rather than using vOn, we can replace this directive with the @ character. Be sure to remove the colon too. This attribute isn't valid, but that's perfectly fine. Vue will be able to understand that you want to listen for events with this shorthand method. For the rest of this course, we'll be using the shorthand way of listening for events. Let's explore some more events and dig deeper into what else we can do. If I were to write something into the text input fields, the name would get updated. That's thanks to the vModel directive and the reactivity that Vue brings to the table. However, let's say I wanted a bit more control over what goes on. The vModel directive is a combination of binding and using events in Vue. Let me show you what I mean. For the last name, let's say we wanted to insert ourselves into the update process. We can't do that with the vModel directive. If we want more control over the update process, we'll have to remove the vModel directive. Instead, we'll need to bind the value attribute. Take special note, I'm using the shorthand version for binding a value. The value for this will be last name. By binding the value, this input field will be pre-filled with the default value from the last name data property. If we were to refresh the page, we will see the input field for the last name pre-filled with the data property. However, if I were to update the input field, you'll notice that the last name does not update. The same is true if I were to use the Vue developer tools to inspect the data. The last name data property stays the same in the application. This is because view is setting the value on the initial run. It will not take care of updating the value inside the data property or listen for changes. We'll have to take care of that ourselves. Back inside the document, we're going to bind an event to the input field for the last name. The name of the event we'll listen for is called input. We'll set the value to update last name. This method doesn't exist. We'll need to create it. Inside the methods object, we're going to define the update last name function. How do we grab the value from the input field? In the function, we can update it to include a parameter called event. When view calls your function, it'll automatically pass your method the event object. The event object is the typical JavaScript event object you would encounter in plain JavaScript. We can update the last name property to event.target.value. The target object refers to the element that is currently triggering the event. Since it's the input field, we can access a property called value, which contains the current value inside the input field. We can use this property to update the last name data property. Let's give this a whirl, shall we? Refresh the page and try updating the last name. After updating the input for the last name, the expression for the full name will get updated. By using bindings and listening for events, we were able to mimic the same behavior the vModel directive performs. The difference being is that we can do more during the process if we need such control. Otherwise, these two do the exact same thing. The vModel directive is described as being syntactic sugar. You're free to use either one as you wish. I recommend using the vModel directive whenever possible because it means writing less code.